Hello, friend, and welcome back to Couch Tales, Why We Do What We Do, the podcast where we dive into the funny, sometimes not so funny psychology of what makes us tick. I'm your host, Analia, and today we're tackling a spicy topic. Why does arguing with a man's decision often backfire? Now, before we dive in, let me clarify. This isn't about who's right or wrong in relationships or some outdated women should be seen and not heard nonsense. This is about understanding some interesting psychological patterns that can help all of us communicate better. So let me tell you a story about my friend Sophia. Sophia and her husband Marco had been planning their summer vacation for months. Marco had his heart set on a camping trip in the mountains. Sophia, however, was dreaming of a beach resort with actual plumbing and minimal chance of bear encounters. When Marco announced he had already reserved the site, Sophia went into full debate mode. She presented a PowerPoint presentation. Yes, an actual PowerPoint, listing all the logical reasons why the beach was superior. Better weather, lower chance of rain, proximity to medical facilities, and a comprehensive comparison of bathroom options. The more facts and arguments Sophia presented, the more Marco dug in his heels. His face got that stony look that screamed, "I've made up my mind." She even showed him reviews from people who had terrible experiences at that specific campground, complete with photos of questionable outhouse facilities. Marco's response, though, he bought a bigger tent and extra bug spray. What started out as a simple disagreement turned into a 3-week Cold War that ended with them taking separate vacations. Marco went camping with his brother, while Sophia went to the beach with her sister. Both claimed they had a great time, but their social media stories told a different tale of forced smiles and passive-aggressive captions. So what happened here? Why did Sophia's logical approach completely backfire? From an evolutionary perspective, our bearded psychology ancestor from Vienna, you know who I'm talking about, might say this touches on deep-seated ego defense mechanisms. When someone challenges a decision we've made, our brain often perceives it as a threat, not to the decision itself, but to our competence and autonomy. Research by modern brain explorers, that's psychologists to you and me, shows that for many people, especially those socialized as men in our culture, having their decisions publicly challenged can trigger what's called a status threat response. The brain actually processes this challenge similarly to physical threats. Relationship studies found that when people feel their competence is being questioned, the amygdala, our brain's alarm system, activates. Once that happens, the thoughtful, rational prefrontal cortex takes a coffee break. Logic goes out the window, and the defenses come rushing in. It's not a guy thing either. It's a human thing that tends to be amplified by gender socialization. Men in many cultures are taught from childhood that decision-making ability is tied to their value and identity. So when that's challenged, it can feel like a challenge to their core self. So what could Sophia have done differently? Well, a more effective approach might have been to affirm Marco's camping decision first, then introduce alternatives as additions, not replacements. Something like, "I love that you found this campsite. I'm wondering if we might also consider spending a few days at the beach resort I found for the second half of our trip." This approach acknowledges the person's decision-making capability while creating space for discussion. It's not about manipulation. It's about understanding how our brains process challenges to decisions we've already emotionally invested in. Instead of presenting counter-arguments, ask genuine questions about the decision. What are you most excited about with camping? Or, what made you choose this particular site? This often leads to the person voluntarily considering alternatives without feeling defensive. The research shows that timing matters too. People are much more open to reconsidering decisions before they've announced them publicly. Once someone has declared, "This is what we're doing," changing course means potentially losing face. The reality is, none of this is about women needing to tiptoe around men's feelings. It's about understanding how all human brains work and using that knowledge to communicate more effectively. These same principles apply regardless of gender, though our cultural programming can amplify certain responses. So next time you find yourself wanting to change someone's mind after they've already planted their flag on a decision, remember Sophia's PowerPoint disaster. Instead of launching into debate mode, try curiosity, affirmation, and introducing alternatives as additions rather than replacements. And maybe, just maybe, compromise on a cabin by a lake with both mountains and a beach. And proper toilets. Always negotiate for proper toilets, friends. Now, I know I have an episode about why compromise is unsatisfying, but ultimately the decision is left up to you. All right, that's it for today's episode of Couch Tales, Why We Do What We Do. I'm your host, Analia. If you like this episode, please take a moment to follow, subscribe, and share it with a friend. Until next time, friends, stay curious, stay kind, and remember, sometimes the best way to win an argument is to avoid having one in the first place.